sustainability. Every one of us can help, be part of the solution, and influence change. Over 5 million actions have been taken to date, and you can go to Act Now UN and add your personal climate actions and contribute to the global count. In this decade, we have a critical and short window to make some much needed and significant changes. In line with the UN's Decade of Action, these coming years are very crucial for increased action and a sustainable world. Now, to set the context of where we are right now, let's take a look at this video.
Earth, our only home. Invaluable, but not invulnerable. Are we too late to save it? Climate change is making our world more dangerous, more fragile, more unequal. In these uncertain times, women and girls face a disproportionate threat of displacement, poverty, and violence. But women and girls are also a powerful force in climate action. As innovators in green energy, as defenders of the environment, and as educators of our generation and the next. Gender equality is not just a woman's issue. It's the path to our survival. So it's not too late to invest in climate action by and for women. Not too late to empower women entrepreneurs and decision makers at home. Not too late to give voice and power to this next generation of Earth's champions. It's not too late to demand commitments to build an equal and enduring future for all. Championing climate action by and for women and girls is the key to saving our planet. Join the fight for gender equality today, so that together we can create a sustainable tomorrow. It's not too late.
And that is what today's program is all about. And women and girls have a very huge role to play. During our 90-minute program, you will hear from icons you know and icons you will meet, including Dr. Jane Goodall, and 2 champions of the earth whom Time magazine has named among the 15 women in the world leading the fight to save the planet. We will also see performances from environmental rights defenders, a 14-year-old powerhouse singer, and a troupe of Broadway's finest performers to perform the UN Women Anthem. Now, our next speaker is the president of the 76th session of the General Assembly. As Minister of Foreign Affairs of the island nation of the Maldives, our focus today is not an abstract concept to him, but an everyday challenge. The nation of the Maldives and its people are on the front lines of the climate crisis. Let's welcome the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency, Mr. Abdullah Shahid.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to join you all for the commemoration of International Women's Day. I thank UN Women for organizing today's event. The theme of this year's International Women's Day, Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, aims to highlight the pivotal contributions of women and girls in tackling climate change, in strengthening disaster risk reduction, and in building more resilient, more sustainable societies. Across societies, the impact of climate change affects women and men differently. Women are often responsible for gathering and producing food, collecting water, and sourcing fuel for heating and cooking. Droughts, floods, and heat waves intensified by climate change means these tasks are becoming more difficult and time-consuming. This leaves women with less time to pursue their education or other sources of income and impacts their health. Female farmers are responsible for 45 to 80% of food production in developing countries. But in half the countries of the world, they are denied land rights. They are also often prevented from borrowing money, which could enable them to access skills training, fertilizer, better seeds, and the tools that would help increase their crop yields. As farming land becomes barren or water shortages increase, women and girls take on increased tasks and risks. This affects their ability to pursue sustainable development objectives, affecting their health, education, and jobs and livelihoods, among so many other areas. Excellencies, the economic stress caused by climate impacts can also mean less money for medication for pregnant women to get the care they need. Moreover, in natural disasters, more women than men die because they have less savings or property to deal with the impacts and must shelter in unsafe places. Lack of assets and restrictions on their human rights may also prevent them from moving to safer locations. Despite women being disproportionately affected by climate change, they play a crucial role in climate change adaptation and mitigation. Women have the knowledge and understanding of what is needed to adapt to changing environmental conditions and to come up with practical solutions. But they are still a largely untapped resource. Restricted land rights, lack of access to financial resources, training and technology, and limited access to political decision-making spheres often prevent them from playing a full role in tackling climate change and other environmental challenges. Clearly, more must be done to support women facing the impacts of climate or disaster risks. Excellencies, despite the gender impacts of climate and disasters, women and girls continue to be leaders in each of these areas and in broader sustainable development efforts. They are scientists, educators, advocates, influencers, researchers, frontline workers, decision makers at home, at all levels of government and in the private sector. They are setting and shaping the sustainable development discourse. While we acknowledge their contribution in these fields, we must also realize that women remain underrepresented, undersupported, and unrecognized in the social, economic, and political fields needed for their sustainable recovery. Excellencies, we have adopted development frameworks to guide sustainable efforts, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. Gender equality is a prerequisite in the realization of each of these goals. Gender equality, and therefore the empowerment of women and girls, is a sustainable solution. We must strengthen mechanisms that provide pathways and support for ingenuity, ambition, and creativity from all people who have the skills and the drive. And we must remove the barriers that prevent women from engaging. As a gender champion, mainstreaming gender equality remains an underlying priority of my presidency of hope, be it on vaccines, climate action, human rights, or revitalization of the United Nations. It is a commitment that secures the engagement of women and girls at every given opportunity. It is a commitment to listen and learn, to hear the lived experiences of women and girls. I will continue to listen to their concerns and views to better understand the gaps and lessons and to understand where we need to accelerate action. It is my hope that you can all join me on this course of action towards a sustainable future for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Shahid, for your commitment to women and girls and to a sustainable future for all. So next week begins the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. The upcoming Commission's 2-week series of meetings, negotiations, and side events focuses on exactly what we are discussing: gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. In light of that, we are privileged and delighted to welcome from South Africa the Chair of the Commission, Her Excellency Ms. Matu Joyini.
Excellencies, friends, it is my pleasure to join you for the United Nations observance of International Women's Day. Today we honor the women and girls steering climate action and sustainability initiatives around the world. The lives and livelihoods of entire communities are impacted by natural disasters, drought, disrupted ecosystems, deforestation, and other environmental crises every day. Yet these effects are not felt equally. We know that climate change is not a gender-neutral crisis. Women and girls often experience the greatest impact of climate change. Building their resilience to climate change and environmental and systemic risk must be a priority for us all. Next week, I have the privilege of opening the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. Over the course of 2 weeks, we will hear from environmental champions, governments, and sustainability experts on ways in which we can prioritize the needs of women and girls and elevate their voices in the context of climate adaptation and mitigation. At the same time, member states will discuss the ways in which gender perspectives can more effectively be integrated into climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. For a sustainable tomorrow, the gendered impacts of climate change must be confronted decisively and urgently. As the main outcome of the session, I am committed to a robust set of agreed conclusions which will place women and girls firmly at the center of climate and sustainability solutions. The COVID-19 pandemic has both compounded the climate emergency and exacerbated existing gender inequalities. Yet, despite these challenges, women and girls today are driving climate and environmental action. Today's program lineup illustrates that women and girls of all ages have emerged as effective and powerful leaders and change makers for climate adaptation and mitigation. I look forward to hearing from many of them today and during the course of the upcoming session of CSW. One of the biggest solutions to the climate crisis, which is the greatest existential threat to humanity and our planet, is the empowerment of women and girls. Let us therefore commit to achieving gender equality in every sphere to ensure that a sustainable tomorrow is within reach for us all. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Joyini. We are looking forward to your leadership during the Commission on the Status of Women, as well as the commitments and actions that will be taken to elevate women and young girls to leadership positions. Now, let's take a big picture look at our beautiful planet. We are grateful to have the amazing Youth Poet Laureate of the United States, Ms. Amanda Gorman, presenting her poem, Earthrise.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not. Just as we chose to go to the moon, we know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Sometimes there just aren't enough words to express the emotional impact of listening and watching something like that. Amanda Gorman, you are a genius at heart. Thank you for your talent and for your passion. And a heartfelt thanks to the Climate Reality Project for letting us share their video of this unforgettable performance. The UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women is the former ambassador of Jordan to the United Nations. Prior to that, 35 years of leadership experience has encompassed every level, from the grassroots to the national, regional, and international level. As a communications expert, she understands the value of women and girls and their representation being key to a sustainable world. In her first 6 months in office, she has led UN Women's response to major global crises such as the pandemic, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine. As part of her priorities, she seeks to empower young women and build resilience of all women and girls to unexpected shocks and disasters. She is undoubtedly a leader for these times. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Sima Baos.
Secretary General, President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, honored guests, and friends. On International Women's Day, we celebrate the power and potential of women and girls. We recognize their courage, resilience, and leadership. We mark the ways in which we are making progress towards a more gender-equal world. At the same time, we see how that progress is being undermined by multiple interlocking and compounding generational crises. Currently, we are witnessing the horrifying situation in Ukraine, where the impacts on women and girls, including the hundreds of thousands displaced, remind us that all conflicts, from Ukraine to Myanmar to Afghanistan, from the Sahel to Yemen, exact their highest price from women and girls. The Secretary General has been clear: war must stop. Recently, we have seen the impact of COVID-19 in increasing inequalities, driving poverty and violence against women and girls, and rolling back their progress in employment, health, and education. The accelerating crises of climate change and environmental degradation are disproportionately undermining the rights and well-being of women and girls. They are multiplying insecurity at all levels, from individual and household to national. Rising temperatures, extending droughts, violent storms, and floods are resulting in loss of livelihoods, depleting resources, and fueling migration and displacement. The latest major IPCC report on climate change and our Secretary General have warned us that nearly half of humanity is living in the danger zone now, and that many ecosystems are at the point of no return now. Climate change is a threat multiplier, but women, and especially young women, are solution multipliers. We have today the opportunity to put women and girls at the center of our planning and action, and to integrate gender perspectives into global and national laws and policies. We have the opportunity to rethink, reframe, and reallocate resources. We have the opportunity to benefit from the leadership of women and girls environmental defenders and climate activists to guide our planet's conservation. We need Indigenous women's intergenerational knowledge, practices, and skills. It will take unprecedented levels of global cooperation and solidarity to succeed. But there is no alternative to success. We must protect our hard-won gains on human rights and women's rights and lead decisively to leave no woman or girl behind. We have a blueprint to follow. It involves women's full and equal participation and leadership in decision-making, their access to green jobs and the blue economy, their equal access to finance and resources. We need to ensure universal social protection and a care economy that protects us all. We have to scale up financing for gender-responsive climate, environmental and disaster risk initiatives, including for COVID-19 recovery, and to increase resilience to future shocks. The solution is there. We must resolve to pursue it. Let us make this International Women's Day a moment to recall that we have the answers, not just for SDG 5, but through the advancement of gender equality for all 17 SDG goals and Agenda 2030. I look forward to working with every one of you to that end, and I thank you.
Indeed, young women are solution multipliers. Thank you, Executive Director, especially for highlighting how interlocking and compounding intergenerational crises continue to undermine the progress towards a more gender equal world. Now, even with the daunting challenges, here are just a couple of examples of ingenuity that women and even young girls are displaying. In India, Lesipria Kankujam founded the Child Movement and speaks for climate action and legislation to protect the environment in India and around the world. And by the way, Lesipria is 8 years old. In Fiji, Katarina Balesuva's sustainable KB farm is an inspirational force for aqua farming. Changing weather patterns interfered with usual farming practices, so she invested in one tilapia pool, and now she has 4. She has created the country's first private tilapia hatchery for not only herself, but other aqua farmers. And in Kenya, when climate change threatened the lives and livelihoods of people in the arid regions of Kenya, a small shareholder farmer by the name Julia Nyambura took strong action. She installed a water harvesting system, diversifying her crops, and invested in a new poultry species to boost the profit for her farm. Another example of courage and ingenuity in the face of danger happening in many places around the world is that of women environmental rights defenders who are always in harm's way, literally putting themselves, their lives, and their livelihoods on the line to protect the environment. This is a story of resolve that we don't hear enough about. However, today we are privileged to hear from a group from Colombia who are on the front lines and have a powerful message for us. This musical performance is the anthem of the Pro Defensores initiative, which recognizes the immense contribution of women and girl leaders and change makers who promote social and environmental sustainability. This song originates in Tubaco Narino and is performed by the Cantadoras del Pacifico, an intergenerational group of women interwoven in sisterhood whose performance honors the work of fellow environmental leaders, activists, and defenders.
Participar merece todo el respeto, nuestro cuerpo y nuestra dignidad. Tengo derecho a mi suelo, mis montañas e identidad, a libremente expresarme, cantamos por la libertad. Prodefensoras de los derechos, entretejidas en hermandad, nuestras raíces nos unen. Y nuestra madre, la libertad. Que no haya más violaciones al derecho fundamental, el de la vida del territorio y sin violencia vivir en paz. Tengo derecho a cumplir mis sueños, a hacer alianza por la paz, a de mi tierra no desplazarme y mi cultura conservar.
Thank you to these fierce and talented singers. We are glad we could bring this performance to you to highlight this issue and honor the champions doing the work on the ground. Now, coming up later in our program, we have singer Angelica Hale, living legend Dr. Jane Goodall, the UN Deputy Secretary General, and the UN Women Anthem sung by Broadway singers to close off our commemoration. Now to the heart of our topic today. We will hear from 4 experts at the forefront of the climate crisis, each who work tirelessly to connect the dots between effective action and gender equality in their own way. Moderating this panel is Ms. Kabelo Dukove, originally from Botswana and currently serving in the office of the UN Women Executive Director as part of the Young Women Leaders Program. Please welcome our moderator, Kabelo Dukove. Over to you.
Thank you, Matlatse. Good day, everyone. I am honored to serve as this panel's moderator. Today, we have a wide range of international expertise with us. As a young leader at the UN from the Global South, I have been inspired by the devotion and commitment of these 4 panelists in their respective fields. Let me introduce you to the members of our expert panel. From the Maldives, the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Technology, Ms. Aminat Shona. From Mexico, Fridays for Future Youth climate justice activist, Maria Reyes. And now, 2 women whom Time magazine said are among the 15 women in the world leading the fight against climate change. From the United States, Executive Director of the All We Can Save project, Dr. Catherine Wilkinson. From Chad, President of the Association for Indigenous Women and People of Chad, Hindu Imirao Ibrahim. First, Madam Minister, you have been an activist and a leader for a very long time, starting from when you were about 9 years old. And that has led you to COP26 and brought you to a place of power and a formidable seat at the table. Minister, you join us today from the Maldives. How critical are the links between climate sustainability and gender equality in small island states? And how can we mitigate gender biases, particularly harnessing new technologies in climate adaptation and mitigation responses?
Thank you. It's a great privilege to be here with you today, and greetings on International Women's Day to all here. Gender equality is certainly very closely interlinked with climate sustainability, particularly in small island developing states. Its devastating impacts really exposed women's vulnerabilities in the Maldives. Women were disproportionately impacted in terms of employment, including through redundancy and complete loss of income, and more susceptible to long-term unemployment as a result as well. And the women who do work, more women work in the informal sector than men, and twice as many women are employed in vulnerable work than men. So in the context where we have one of the highest share of female-headed households in the world, this really had far-reaching socioeconomic consequences. So the pandemic really has many parallels to the climate crisis. Amongst others, it really showed us how global crisis could have much differentiated impacts at local levels, including in its socio-economic outcomes. So the climate crisis is really gendered. The Maldives is about 1,200 islands, and most of our islands are just about 1.5 meters above sea level. Most men work in other islands, in resorts, and usually far away from their local islands. So, and the elderly. Most schools and households are just within about 100 meters from the shoreline. Most of the islands in the Maldives are experiencing erosion. We have more severe storms during the rainy seasons. We are more prone to disasters. All the islands, groundwater is affected by salination because of flooding and severe erosion. So this is why we really need to invest in urgent adaptation measures to prevent climate disasters. And because of this, women are more impacted in the islands. And that's why we need to have women's participation in decision making to make sure that our development is resilient. The government is investing in renewables to move away from fossil fuels. We are on track to reach 26% shine. We are on track to phase out single-use plastics by 2023. We have introduced affirmative action to make sure that nearly 39% of our local councillors, elected local councillors, are women as well. So they are now an integral part of decision-making at a local level. So I think this is really how we can build a resilient island community, by making them part of the decision-making at a local level, to make our islands safer for the women, elderly, and children, and for all of us, and so that we could continue to live in these islands in harmony with our island ecosystems, to plan resilient development. I believe that once women are in decision-making roles, and once this is normalized in our local islands, perceptions will change, and more women will be in turn to be encouraged, to be empowered to take such roles. As more women are represented in the decision-making tables, I'm optimistic that the gender biases can be gradually eliminated from all spheres of life, and we can build more resilient island communities.
Thank you, Minister Shauna. So glad that you shared the importance of having women in decision-making positions, as it is vital for them, as they are affected and are vulnerable and are prone to the affected islands. Thank you. And now let's turn to Dr. Catherine Wilkinson. She is a best-selling author, co-host of the podcast A Matter of Degrees, and heads the All We Can Save project. Catherine, in 2017, you were the lead author of the best-selling book Drawdown, which identified the leading climate solutions and found that empowering and educating women and girls was a key solution. Recently, you have described the climate crisis as a leadership crisis and called for gender equality as part of the solution. Why is the climate leadership of women and girls so vital?
Well, I think as we've been hearing from so many of the amazing presenters today, there has long been a leadership crisis at the heart of the climate crisis, right? Far too many people who hold power today are continuing to focus on short-term profit and propping up the status quo rather than marshaling the influence that they have for change. And it's going to require a broad leadership upwelling to change that. And it is critical that women and girls and non-binary leaders are at the heart of that. Why? Because as we have already heard, there is nothing gender neutral about the climate crisis. When we look at root causes, the climate crisis has emerged from a society that is defined by patriarchy and supremacy. And these dynamics of domination and control are at the root of the mess we're in. So we've got to confront them. The impacts also, we've heard, right? Climate change turns up the heat on existing vulnerabilities and injustices in our society. And women and girls and gender minorities are facing deeply unequal impacts from climate change in so many ways, many of which have been touched on. And so all of that means that when we turn to solutions, those cannot be gender neutral either, right? They have to be gender aware and gender just and shaped by the people who are most impacted. Here's the but. Research shows that underrepresentation and exclusion of women, especially women of color, remains a persistent problem in virtually every decision-making space where we are making choices about our collective climate future. And that is not just unfair, it is setting us up for failure, because research also shows that climate action is more successful, climate policy is better, more land is protected, on and on, when women are represented and leading equally. And I think it's also worth noting that it's not just about who is leading, but about how, right? Doing this work in ways that embody collaboration, care, creativity, community, courage. This is the kind of leadership that is vital to achieving a just and life-giving future, and it is wide open to people of any gender. And the good news is that despite burdens, systemic barriers, burnout, women and girls are leading on climate boldly and throwing open the doors to welcome more people into this great work of transformation that we have at hand. So this leaderful movement that we so need, that is the crux, I think, of getting to the future that we want, it is on the rise. And I just imagine what might be possible if we threw our collective weight truly behind it.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. So profound and so important and vital in times of crisis. Our next panelist is the president of the Association for Indigenous Women and People of Chad, and a leading expert in how Indigenous peoples adapt to and mitigate climate change. We have lost connection with Hindu, who is in Chad. She had anticipated some technological glitches. We do have a video of her from the ground in Chad, where she's working with her community.
Hi, everyone. Indigenous women are solution makers. They are climate warriors and climate heroes. I would remind to all of us that climate discussions started 30 years ago, and we are still discussing. We have one COP each year, but over the last 30 years, Indigenous women have been acting. They have been fighting climate change on the ground, like here, in their communities, in all the various ecosystems. Over the last 30 years, they have found in their traditional knowledge concrete solutions. Solution for water access, solution for traditional medicine, for food security. We have so many examples. I am here today in my communities doing a participatory mapping with all the women. They know better their environment than man. They help map over the 3,000 kilometers square here. When man struggles to identify a place or knowledge, I call a woman and they correct and fix all what is needed. So when leaders, basically man, where they discuss again and again in Rio, in Paris, in Copenhagen, even in Glasgow, Indigenous women were active. This is why we Indigenous peoples protect the 80% of the world's biodiversity. And for that, women are the best. We take care of our forests, of our savannas, of our coral reef. Because of Indigenous women, nature is our pharmacy for our children. It is our supermarket to feed our families. Ask an Indigenous woman, we always consider that nature is the best husband. Mother Earth brings food, clean water, fresh air without complaining. And Mother Nature will never cheat on you. For me, it is time for man to listen to women. It is time for classic science to listen to Indigenous women. It is so to give these women the power to change things, both at the international level, in negotiation, but mainly on the ground, because we need action now. Give us the money, give us the respect of our rights, and you can see the solutions. You know, in the COP26, all indigenous peoples put such a pressure. We got 1.7 billion promised to help our solutions. But now this money need to arrive in this community, in these women here. In the COP27, we will check if the money that have been promised here at the COP26 reach to the communities in each countries that listed, because we have to act, and women are the best one who can fight. But I have 3 wishes to you. You know, the gender equality is everywhere. It is not an item on the agendas. It is a way of life. To do it, we wanted to give it to our doctors. So today, I wish International Women's Days for all the women, but for all the peoples also. We need firstly the trust to ensure the women leadership in environmental project. I have developed a lot of projects with the women, and I can assure you that one of them give a woman right to the land in order to get adapt and mitigate to the climate change. So we need that trust. Second, we need the sharing with the elders, with the children, with the vulnerable communities that can help us to get the respect on the violence against women. We have no time for conflict or violence between man and woman. We must focus all our effort to fight the environmental crisis, and women can do that better. We have no time for the violence and the sexism. Last one, it is the right. It is a dark time with the COVID, climate change, conflict. But from this darkness, we need to answer by ensuring our rights as indigenous women are fully respected in the communities. And today, some of the young girls, as those who are here, don't have the right to go to school or to choose the husband or to earn the land. So we need to demonstrate it is possible. It is not a fatality. For instance, last year, some of the indigenous girls are going to school. I wanted to see them on the upcoming years. They move from this darkness and we turn it into the light. We can get a hope with all of you here. Happy International Women's Day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Hindu. Indeed, the role of Indigenous women in climate action cannot be reiterated enough. Next up, Maria. You are a full-time youth climate activist, making an impact globally at only 19. You are also a leading member of the Generation Equality Action Coalition on Feminist Action for Climate Justice, and are a fierce fighter for the most vulnerable communities facing climate change. So Maria, what are the most critical issues related to gender equality and environmental sustainability? And how does the UN Generation Equality Forum Action Coalition advance these goals? I also want to know, why is it important to use an intersectional approach that prioritizes the well-being of the most vulnerable women and girls in response to the climate crisis?
Thank you, Kevela, for this question. To address the intersectional aspect of the climate emergency, we need to recognize that the climate crisis is a crisis of inequalities. So the communities who are the most affected are not the most responsible ones for causing it, and the countries and companies who are the most responsible are not even suffering the impacts, nor taking the responsibility to repair the damages. Being most affected includes experiencing direct climate impacts, such as floods, wildfires, typhoons, but also experiencing the oppression of systems such as racism, classism, patriarchy, ableism, and others that are complicit with the structural causes of climate crisis. This happens because our various identities intersect and create conditions that under this system make us victims of discrimination and disadvantage. Women and girls, as well as non-binary people who have been socialized as women, are most impacted by climate impacts in many ways. In my community, a rural town in the periphery of the city of Puebla, the most pressure issue is water scarcity. Let me explain. We are usually assigned roles like preparing food, cleaning the house, taking care of elder relatives as well as children. All these activities require close contact with water. For this reason, women realize first when the availability of water is decreasing, and therefore we are the first affected ones by water scarcity, as it makes it more difficult for us to carry out our activities. In addition to this, scarcity affects dignified menstruation since it complicates adequate sanitation, and the lack of access to clean water is a threat to our health. I myself have been sick during the last 2 years by drinking polluted water. But we are not only victims of the climate injustice, we are powerful actors of change, especially women from rural and indigenous communities who hold the ancestral knowledge of how to collaborate with nature in a reciprocal and respectful way. And we are currently organizing our communities to preserve and share that knowledge. Women need to be given a space in the international platforms where decisions are made and given the opportunity to influence those processes, especially non-hegemonic women, such as trans women, disabled women, and women of color. This is something that the Generation 44 works for. It gives us a platform to make louder the voices of most affected women, and that's what moves me personally to collaborate with you women. However, looking at the climate crisis in an intersectional way includes to look at those who have a bigger responsibility to address the issue. We need to look at the climate debt, which tells us how some countries and companies, mainly from the global north, have put a disproportionate amount of polluting emissions in the atmosphere, and therefore have contracted a debt with nature and humanity to take responsibility for their damage. Taking responsibility is not only to give money away in the form of climate finance, which is needed and won't be turned away, but it also includes global north countries and companies to provide climate reparations to communities most affected, giving land back, restoring forests, or even removing carbon from the atmosphere through just processes. We need to keep putting pressure on them to move away from fossil fuels, not only because their pollution is condemning our existence, but also because their obsession behind them conducts wars in Yemen, in Syria, in Balochistan, in Kurdistan, and now in Ukraine. People in these regions are already suffering the brunt of climate impacts and social inequalities, but fossil wars are turning them into refugees, the height of injustice.
Thank you, Maria. I remember watching my old radio in Botswana at the farm, transmitting energy from a solar panel, which was actually the source of power from our sun, from the Botswana sun, and thinking, what can be achieved with solar power in my country, and how it will change lives in so many remote villages. So thank you for sharing with us, Maria, on the need to focus more on the local. Like I just learned in Tanzania, a widowed young Maasai mother, Gladness Gilole, witnessed rising temperatures and water scarcity threatening her life savings and livestock. When she heard about the Energizer course offered by her Pastoral Women's Council with UN Women, she enrolled. 2 years later, Gladness is thriving as a farm owner, manager of a tailor business, and selling and installing solar equipment. So now I have a final closing question, and it is the same for each of you. How do you answer the question all of us have? What can I do in order to achieve a sustainable world for future generations? Minister?
We are at the brink of the climate crisis. The Maldives is at the forefront of this change as well. We saw what the latest IPCC report stated just a few days ago. Unless we are able to limit global temperatures below 1.5 degrees, countries like the Maldives are going to be facing so many developmental challenges. I think the most effective way we can make an impact as an individual is to really consume sustainably, in buying our groceries, in buying our clothes, in making big purchases, in our consumption of utilities, or even in choosing our holiday destinations. We need to make choices that reduce our footprint, because everything that we do contributes to that 1.5 degrees, and to keep it under 1.5 degrees. We have about 96 months to go. And if the entire world, if everyone individually takes these actions, we might be able to prevent the climate crisis.
Thank you, Minister. Dr. Wilkinson.
Well, I think this question of what can I do, what can we do, is the question maybe to work with and to continue answering for really for the rest of our lives, because we are all called to be part of Earth's healing, and we've got a lot of work ahead. I like to think about 3 realms of how I can keep kind of living into answers for this question. One is the personal. So what can I do in my home, in my immediate community, but also some of the kind of emotional work that I think it takes to keep confronting the climate crisis. And then the professional. My friend Jamie Alexander likes to say that every job is a climate job now. So how does climate connect with your knowledge, your skills, your superpowers? Find a way to work on climate, whatever work you do. And then third, the political, participating in electoral politics, policy advocacy, collective action. We can't go it alone. We have to become the biggest, mightiest we possibly can. And however we answer this question of what can I do, we all have a role to play in this incredible ecosystem of transformation. So lean into that question and know that answering it will never be work that is done. It will be something that continues to unfold as we all claim our places within the community of life.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. Maria?
Thank you for this question. I think that to achieve a sustainable work, we need to work with the communities at the grassroots level. We need to know the struggle of climate migrants and refugees suffering racism. We need to know the struggle of Indigenous people defending water and land. We need to know the struggle of workers being affected by the industries that are also pressing. Everyone needs to join the fight. Everyone needs to join the movement. I invite you to join for the next global climate strike of Fridays for Future on March 25. We have the narrative of people, not profit. And this means that we really need to boost how the capitalist system we live on has put people under the oppression of being used as tools for the capitalist purposes. We need to work with the communities, empower them, listen to them, and make ourselves present, and make them know that we are here to support them, and we are here to make their voices louder.
Thank you, Maria. Unfortunately, we have lost contact with Hindu. Thank you all very much for your insights. This has been an amazing and quite informative discussion. My takeaway is gender equality is everywhere. There is also a need for resilient development in climate action and the need to demonstrate it is possible collectively. So what is your action plan for sustainability? As Dr. Wilkinson said, lean into that question. Now let me hand this back to you, Matlatsi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kabelo, and a heartfelt appreciation to each of our 4 panelists for sharing such insightful information and for the significant work you continue to do every day. As a little girl, Angelica Hale had always wanted to be a singer. In 2012, she was only 4 years old when she was suddenly struck with an illness which would lead to sepsis, permanently scarring her lungs and destroying her kidneys. She spent 80 days in the hospital fighting for her life and wondering if her dreams of becoming a singer would ever come true. With the help of a kidney transplant from her mother, she survived, literally against all odds. She's now 14, and well, I'll let her tell the rest.
Hello everyone, I'm Angelica Hale, singer and runner-up on America's Got Talent 2017, and two-time Golden Buzzer recipient. Thank you so much to UN Women for having me here once again for International Women's Day. First, I want to give my thoughts and prayers to the people of Ukraine. I want to sing a song that I believe is not only extremely empowering to women all across the world, but is a testament to people fighting for their hopes and dreams. Here is Reach by Gloria Estefan.
Some dreams live on in time forever. Those dreams you want with all your heart, and I'll do whatever it takes. Follow through with the promise I made. Put it all on the line. What I hope for at last would be mine. If I could reach higher, just for one moment touch the sky. For that one moment in my life, I'm gonna be stronger. Know that I've tried my very best. I put my spirit to the test. If I could reach, some days were meant to be remembered. Those days we rise above the stars, and so I'll go the distance this time, seeing more the higher I climb, and the more I believe, all the more that this dream will be mine. If I could reach higher, just for one moment touch the sky. For that one moment in my life, I'm gonna be stronger. Know that I've tried my very best. I put my spirit to the test. If I could reach, if I could reach higher, just for one moment touch the sky. For that one moment in my life, I'm gonna be stronger. Know that I've tried my very best. I put my spirit to the test. Higher, just for one moment touch the sky. For that one moment in my life, I'm gonna be stronger. Know that I've tried my very best. I put my spirit to the test. Oh, oh,
Angelica, you are so talented and inspiring. I hope that we are able to give your generation and the generations to come a healthier and a safer planet. Your story truly exemplifies that nothing is impossible. Achieving gender equality ensures that all girls will be able to fulfill their dreams and share their unique talent. Now, I am so pleased to have the honor of introducing world-renowned ethologist and conservationist, Dr. Jane Goodall, whose pioneering chimpanzee research has transformed scientific perceptions of the relationship between humans and the rest of the animal kingdom. The Jane Goodall Institute was established in 1977, now has 24 global offices, and has become a global leader in chimpanzee and habitat protection through Jane's innovative community-led conservation approach. The Institute leads the way in trailblazing, science-driven programs, advocacy, animal welfare at its sanctuaries and beyond, as well as a youth empowerment program through Jane Goodall's Root and Shoot program, now in over 50 countries worldwide. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Goodall was traveling nearly 300 days a year on a perpetual world tour, speaking in response to current challenges. Dr. Goodall and the Jane Goodall Institute created Virtual Jane, a way to connect with audiences virtually from her family home in Bournemouth, England, where she was born, through remote lectures, media interviews, countless recordings, and her popular podcast, the Jane Goodall Hopecast. Dr. Goodall is a UN messenger of peace and a dame of the British Empire. Her many awards and honors are too numerous to list, but include becoming the Templeton Prize laureate in 2021. She's a prolific author. Jane's newest book, titled The Book of Hope, A Survival Guide for Trying Times, could not be more timely. Today, her mission has evolved into a quest to empower every individual to make the world a better place for people, animals, and the planet.
It's been an amazing journey, this life of mine. This planet has filled me with the wonder of all living things, great and small. We cannot ignore this earth that surrounds us, that feeds us, shelters us, replenishes our bodies and our souls, and stretches our imaginations, where animals, plants, air, water, all care for us. We're all interconnected. People, animals, our environment. When nature suffers, we suffer. And when nature flourishes, we all flourish. I do believe in the possibility of a world where we can live in harmony with nature, but only if every one of us does our part to make that world a reality, so that when you look back over your journey, your life, you can truly say, I did make a difference.
I am absolutely honored to welcome to the virtual International Women's Stage a true global icon and a role model for women and girls everywhere, Dr. Jane Goodall.
Hello, this is Jane Goodall with a message on International Women's Day. Let's take a moment to collectively apologize for the harm we have inflicted on Mother Earth. For I would like to honor the role of mothers. Mine was amazing. She was so supportive. She gave me a wonderful start in life. I've always loved nature and animals. As a child, I was curious and fascinated by their behavior. I didn't think of becoming a scientist. That sort of thing wasn't appropriate for women back then. I wanted to be a naturalist and a writer. And at 10 years of age, I decided I would go to Africa, live with and write books about wild animals. Everyone laughed at me. Girls didn't do things like that. But my mother supported me, saying I would have to work hard, take advantage of opportunities, and if I didn't give up, I might find a way. Well, as many of you know, I did get to Africa, had the opportunity to live with and learn from the animals most like us, chimpanzees. The fact that I was a girl was to my advantage, for my mentor, Dr. Louis Leakey, felt that women might be better in the field, more patient. I take my mother's message to young people, especially girls in disadvantaged communities around the world, and many have thanked me, saying, "You taught me that because you did it, I can do it too." Today, we're trying to cope with climate change, and women only too often bear the brunt of the changing weather patterns that may lead to longer droughts, more hurricanes and flooding. These things are making the lives of some women very difficult because in some parts of the world, women are the ones not only responsible for caring for their children and feeding the family, but also farming, selling the produce and collecting firewood and water. And these things are getting more difficult. In fact, women have a quiet strength, which is often apparent during and after a disaster such as a hurricane or severe flooding. During war, too, women often stand together, supporting each other and caring for all those needing help. In 1960, when I began the chimpanzee research in Tanzania, the Gombe National Park was part of the equatorial forest belt. But by the late 1980s, it was a tiny island of forest surrounded by bare hills. There were more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, and trees had been destroyed to get more land for growing food or to make money from timber or charcoal. It hit me then that if we didn't help these people to make a living without destroying their environment, we couldn't possibly save forests, chimps, or anything else. And so the Jane Goodall Institute started Takari, our method of community-led conservation, working with the villagers around Gombe to improve farming methods, introduce water management programs, and improve health and education facilities. We provide some microcredit opportunities that enable women to start their own environmentally sustainable small businesses, and we provide scholarships to enable girls to have a chance of higher education. We also provide family planning information. Many parents know that one way out of poverty is a good education for their children, and they can no longer afford to educate the 8 or 10 that were normal when I arrived. Once people understand that protecting the environment isn't just for wildlife but their own future, they become our partners in conservation. The forests are reappearing around the national park. Existing forests throughout chimp habitat are being protected, and this is working in 6 other African countries. All these forests are absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and regulating temperature and rainfall. Indigenous people are the traditional custodians of the earth, and in many tribes, women play a very important role in advancing a more sustainable relationship to the natural world. It's desperately important that their voices are listened to as we tackle climate change. The Paris Agreement of 2015 specifically included the need to empower women in climate decision-making, and since then, all around the world, in businesses, politics, local communities, and science, the role of women has increased. Many of those urging decision-makers in politics and business to take steps to control emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases, or protesting the destruction of the natural world for yet another road or shopping mall or oil well. Those voices are from women and girls. Because so many women are on the front line of the climate change fight, they're uniquely situated to be agents of change, to help find ways to mitigate the causes of global warming and to adapt to its impacts on the ground. And it's shocking that these women, particularly Indigenous women, are, I'm told, especially vulnerable to rising threats and acts acts of violence. I want to end by saying that because the problems we face globally are so great, it's desperately important that the voices of all those seeking to protect our future are heard, male and female, old and young. That's a message for all of us on this International Women's Day. Thank you.
Dr. Goodall, we are so grateful you have joined. You have been an inspiration for the world and will remain so for generations to come. Our closing speaker is the UN Deputy Secretary General. Prior to her appointment, she served as Minister of Environment of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In that capacity, she steered the country's efforts on climate action and efforts to protect the natural environment. As Special Advisor to former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, she held the responsibility for post-2015 development and led the process around the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the creation of the Sustainable Development Goals. She is the highest ranking woman in the United Nations and a role model for us all. Please join me in welcoming Her Excellency, Ms. Amina Mohammed.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you in celebrating the women and girls who are working to create a gender-responsive and greener world. Gender equality, climate action, and the environment are inextricably linked. We will never address the climate emergency or create the sustainable, inclusive economies and societies of the future without the contributions of half of humanity. The inspiring women and girls who shared their stories today are, like so many others, important agents of change who have overcome barriers to become dynamic and effective leaders. They, and the many women and girls like them, must be integral to designing sustainable policies, addressing the climate crisis, and building environmental resilience. As we conclude today's program, I urge everyone to take 5 urgent steps. First, increase investments in gender-responsive climate solutions that recognize the needs of women and girls. Second, build the resilience of women and girls to limit impacts and disaster risk, including by repealing laws that prevent them from owning and inheriting land. Third, enable and allow women and girls to lead in designing climate initiatives. Fourth, integrate comprehensive programs on gender-based violence into climate responses. And fifth, ensure that climate change discussions are rooted in the experiences and perspectives of women and girls from a diverse range of backgrounds. Dear friends, we can only address the climate emergency and the many other challenges we face with women and girls at the center of our efforts and the 2030 Agenda as our blueprint. Today, as we celebrate International Women's Day, let us commit to taking action to build a more equal and a more sustainable future for everyone. Thank you.
Deputy Secretary General, thank you for your remarks and your 5 points of action, which are crucial as we reflect on our next steps. At the beginning of our program, I implored you to listen with your eyes, with your ears, and keep your hearts open. We know ideas can change the world, but they need to be put into motion. As we close our program, we have a musical treat that has become an anthem and a tradition. 11 years ago, a special song was created for the inauguration of UN Women. It's called One Woman and has been performed live by some of Broadway's best performers at the UN headquarters in New York. As per our tradition, it closes off every International Women's Day observance. Here to reprise their performance, here's One Woman.
In Kigali, she wakes up, she makes a choice. In Hanoi, Natal, Ramallah.
In Tangier, she takes a breath, lifts up her voice. In Lahore, La Paz, Kampala.
El she's half a world away. Something in me wants to say, we are one woman. You cry and I hear you. We are one woman. You hurt and I hurt too. We are one woman. Your hopes are mine, and we shall shine. And quiet as she speaks the truth, she reaches out, then teaches others how to. In Jaipur, she gives her name. She lives without shame. In Manila, Salta, and Boone. Though we're different as can be, we're connected, she with me. We are one woman. Your courage keeps me strong. We are one woman. You sing, I sing along. We are one woman. Your dreams are mine, and we shall shine. We shall shine. And one man hears her voice, and one man he fights her fight. Day by day, he lets go the old ways. One woman at a time. We are one woman. Your victories lift us all. We are one woman. You rise and I stand tall. We are one woman. Your world is mine, and we shall shine. We shall shine. We shall shine. Shine, shine, shine. And one man hears her voice, and one man fights her fight. Day by day, he lets go the old ways. Shine, shine, shine.
So perhaps you were wondering, do I have a blueprint for action? As mentioned by the UN Women Executive Director and Deputy Secretary General, yes, you definitely have a blueprint to follow. It involves women's full and equal participation and leadership in decision-making, access to green jobs and the blue economy, and access to finance and resources. And maybe you grew up looking for someone to look up to. Just like my younger self, maybe you yearned for someone who could serve as a template for the contribution you sought to make towards global causes, such as gender-based violence or climate action, as we are discussing today. Following this event, I hope you think of Dr. Catherine Wilkinson, Dr. Jane Goodall, Minister Aminat Shona, Ms. Maria Rice, and Ms. Hindu Ibrahim, as women who are steering sustainability initiatives and inspiring you to action. This is a critical moment in our generation, and each one of us is called to action. I would like to earnestly urge you to create and make your contribution to solutions, however big or small. As the Secretary General urges, and I quote, unless we match climate rhetoric with climate action, we condemn ourselves to a hotter, more volatile Earth with worsening disasters, close quote. The truth is, we are all in this together, and it is about millions and millions of us doing the best that we can. In closing, it has been such an honor to serve as your host this year. I would like to extend on behalf of the United Nations our deepest gratitude to each of our participants. A special thank you to you all for watching from all over the world. I hope this has been a memorable commemoration, and happy International Women's Day. Thank you.